So hi everybody and welcome to episode 104 of Level Up, 60 minutes of live Q&A where your questions and votes really do drive the show. A warm welcome to everybody. Do please let our social team online know your name and of course the city from where you are joining. We do love to get everybody involved. Our social team, of course, they're going to post a link into the chat. I think it's Ella and Adriana today actually who are doing that. So they'll be busy online putting into the chat a link for you to vote up the questions that you would most like answered. And of course, to encourage you to add your own. We live stream Mondays at 8 and Fridays at 2 p.m. UK time to both YouTube and also to LinkedIn. Now, if your question for the panel is selected, then your name will appear in the credits at the end of the show. So do get yours in early and stay with us to see that happen. Today, we're going to be talking all about leadership and in particular, how to become and remain authentic whilst you're doing that kind of role. Now, whether your primary job role, of course, is to be a leader or not, when I think we're informally called upon all the time for these skills, in our teams and so on, both inside work and also outside if we're volunteering in any way and that kind of thing. So keeping honest about who we are and keeping true to our own values is really a key element of a sustainable, approachable leadership style. Joining us today are a great panel who work across industries and are truly spanning the globe, actually. So let's jump in and meet them all. Bev Andrews returns today. She is, of course, a director over at Aspire Change Management, who work in both government and in the commercial sectors, focusing on enabling complex transformation programs to happen with pace and scale. A regular contributor to Level Up, Bev is based out of Perth in Western Australia. So welcome back, Bev. Lovely to see you.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's lovely to be back and looking forward to a really robust conversation. Leadership and change is really close to my heart. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And they kind of go hand in glove, really, don't they, together? Chris Bevan joins us today. He's Executive Chairman of Provac, a leading project management training and consultancy based here in the UK. Now, Chris's career is really fascinating. He's worked both in the UK and in the States. And I think it's fair to say that he's equally comfortable working with the C-suite as he is in working with key talent at the operational level. Vastly experienced and a passionate advocate for quality in everything he does. Chris really does lead by example. So welcome to the panel, Chris. Lovely to have you.
Thanks, Nick. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to a vigorous chat on a very, very important topic.
The reason why I'm laughing, okay, the context of the pre-show conversation was about how rapidly things are changing in UK politics, and if somebody says robust conversation at the moment, we all think, ooh, okay. So rejoining us anyway from all the way from Singapore is Sarbojit Bose. He is, of course, managing director over at Cyberservices, and he works tirelessly across the Southeast Asia region to deliver value to his clients, helping them improve their cyber resilience and adopt leading practice. Welcome back to the panel, Sarbojit. Lovely to see you again.
Hi, Nick. Thank you so much for having me, and all the best to everyone in the panel here. And we hope we are in the right nick of time, as we see what things are happening across the globe. So authentic leadership is what we should be focusing on for the day. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Now, we've got a couple of little technical challenges happening today. So we're going to try and get a better video connection. We've got a great audio connection with Sarbojit, but we do want to try and establish that video link as well. Mart Rovers joined us back on the panel again today. So welcome back, Mart. He's first and foremost, of course, a leadership coach in his team at INTERPROM, are creating new levels of value for their clients, both in Europe now as well as in the USA. And of course, he is a regular contributor for us here on the show. So great to see you, Mart. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for having me. Great to see you. Great to see everybody else. Thank you, APMG, for having me, and look forward to some robust questions.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Now I'm terrified. Our question master for today is, of course, the very talented Shanice Mitchell-Cox. She's actually joining us from the green rolling valleys of South Wales here in the UK. How are things over in South Wales, Shanice?
Always wet, always raining over here, but always lovely. So can't complain.
All right. Well, very good. Well, let's put some of that green grass to good purpose, if you like. And I think we should jump straight in. We have got quite a lot of folks already online. I'm just actually going to have a little quick look over on our social feed as to what's happening. Really does look quite an active group today. So that's great. And welcome to our regular viewers as well. So welcome back, Diane. Lovely to see you online again today. Thank you for joining us. Very good. Now, on that note, Shanice, if we may, let's jump in and take our first question, please.
Of course, Nick. Thank you. We've got a question from Ruth in the UK. What does it mean to the panel to be an authentic leader?
So, panel, what does it mean to be authentic? Mart, why don't you start us off and then we'll hear from Bev.
For me, it's about being inspirational, somebody who can motivate. Those are two words that come immediately to mind. So I will leave it at that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Bev and then Sarbojit.
I think it's very much around being trustworthy and confident, empathetic. It's really portraying an interest in people.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Some good thoughts here to get us going. Sarbojit, your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Chris.
Yeah, thank you. So I would say that an authentic leader should be someone who is honest, loyal, should be positive in the thinking, optimistic, and of course the ethical values that must be there. And that's something that we need to foster in every leader so that we can really be a leader, not just a manager or someone of authority.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Sarbojit. Super important, very, really good advice. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I agree with everything that the panel have said. I would add two elements. One is a good leader has to be resilient. The leader has to take pressure and be able to deal with that sort of pressure in a positive way. And that helps by being very self-aware and being self-aware of how one is seen and have the emotional intelligence to be self-aware.
And that's such an important point, isn't it? Because I think sometimes, particularly when people even, if you move up an organization, then there's a greater chance that you need to remain authentic because people already know you. It's like, oh yeah, no, I know Nick. I know what he does. I kind of know what he's like. I've worked with him before, kind of thing. Whereas when you change organizations and you appear, in a senior role or in a leadership role of some form or another, then actually people don't know you, and the risk is there that you don't, kind of look in the mirror, but you rather look through a particular lens. And we all know that not everything on Instagram is real, and not everything that we see of ourselves is real if we're looking through a particular filter. So there we are. So great advice to get us going. And Ruth, thank you so much. What a fantastic question to start us off. On that note, Shanice, let's crack on, if we may, and take our next question, please.
Of course. So we've actually got a question from yourself, Nick. Within hybrid working, how can a leader maintain an open door policy?
Now, this was a question for context panel that I was asked myself, all right, a little while ago. So I thought it would be a really good one, just to kind of relay on into this particular event. So, Chris, would you like to start us off, and then we'll hear from Sarbojit?
Yeah, I think when we use the term open door, we need to mean access. So people have access to the leader. So it's not a physical thing. It's more of a, if you like, an emotional and also the ability to have contact and engage. It's got nothing to do with doors. It's got everything to do with access. How do you make yourself accessible.
Indeed, absolutely right. Thank you very much. Sarbojit, can you answer the question? Do you think, how can we kind of practically do that? And then we'll hear from Bev.
Right. Now, today's date, having an open door also means that we have to have an open communication channel. And we know that from the security perspective, there are certain constraints and threats which are there. So we must have that base infrastructure that help us to be open door. Now we see today, most of the social media has become a platform of misuse of power. And many people, instead of criticizing or commenting, they try to abuse and anyone. So leaders sometimes also can face such dilemma. But if there is a good trust between the leader and those the person is leading, if there's an honest relationship, there's an openness which is built in, and of course the platform of technology is there, then I would think that a leader can maintain an open policy without any fear or of getting too much of stressed.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Bev, how should we go about doing this kind of thing?
Well, just following on from the previous comment around it's about being, accessible. And when you're not, you need to be visible. And so when you're in the office, you can be visible because you can physically open the door and you can walk the floor. But when you're, working in different locations, it's not so easy. So it's simple things like being online, making the time, being proactive to check in with people, little things like the first 10 or 15 minutes of each morning that you've got your Teams open so that people can actually, pop in and have a quick chat. Just things like that, but being visible, active, proactive with and being present.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. Thank you very much indeed, Bev. Mart, what are your thoughts?
Great question, Nick, and glad to help you. It's indeed that what Bev was talking about, and I want to just give an additional level of depth to that as far as, if we start these online meetings and we literally, join the meeting a minute before and we, leave the meeting, right at the end of the meeting, but we never stay on and we never show up early. Those are opportunities to maybe have a little bit of additional chat, or I think a good leader actually should make the time to also reach out and have another conversation than just business, and then, and in that way, remain in touch and remain interested as far as what goes on in another person's life. Because in an office, it's easy to have a chat like that at the water cooler, but when it's about online, that's often not present anymore, because we just show up for meetings and we leave and that's it. And we don't make the time for all these social talk, so to speak.
Absolutely. That's really, really important. Now, something that you may have noticed in this question, actually, it was one of those which caused me to stop and think personally, how do I actually maintain this? Because you're so right. In a physical environment, it's relatively straightforward. You sit in one of those glass boxes or you sit in an open plan, office. People can see you. You walk around, management by walking around is still a thing, I think. And, you're able to engage and so on and encourage people through doing all of that. Now, when you are working remotely, then how do you actually do that? And it was a colleague who kind of thought up as part of the mental health awareness work that was going on within APMG, that it would be really great to have some totally optional, just drop in virtual, coffee and tea breaks and so on. So we run these now weekly in different times for different time zones. And anybody can turn up and take part. It's not to do with work. It's just to do with being present. And it's amazing the range of topics, that get discussed. And so, I've started to adopt that a little bit more, and also to join those meetings 15 minutes before where I can, where I know there's going to be a few folks, so that they can see me And, if they want to just drop me a little, private message or something to say, let's catch up on something, then at least we can do that. So it seems to work quite well, but it is a little different with a hybrid team, to try and make sure that you are visible and accessible and approachable. Quite a hard thing to kind of carry off in full. So thank you very much, panel. Some really good advice there. So Shanice, I can see that we've got a whole heap of questions actually stacking up from our viewers as well as those pre-submitted. So let's move on. Let's take our next question, please.
Of course. We've got a question from Coy. What are the most vital traits of a leader in an organisation?
Okay. Chris, would you like to start us off with this one, and then we'll hear from Mart?
Yes, I'm thinking characteristics more than sort of traits. Maybe they're the same thing. But as we mentioned earlier on, that ability to be resilient is very, very important. But having humility and vulnerability, I think, is also very, very important. It doesn't matter, what the size of your organization is. I would guarantee that leaders do not have all the answers. So having that humility to know that, to say that, and to welcome responses from the team to help make a better decision is absolutely critical. So I'd say humility and vulnerability may not sound to be on the top 10 of an authentic leader's list, but they must be in the top 5.
It's quite interesting, isn't it, when we contrasted the styles of politicians around the world. And was it the Prime Minister of New Zealand who, during the darkest days of the health pandemic, was seen to be really authentic? And she did show that a degree of vulnerability, a degree of herself through the words, the phrasing, the empathy that she was conveying, to her people at a time of great distress and great concern. Mart, your thoughts on this one? What are those most vital attributes, traits, and so on?
Probably building a little bit of what Chris just said, but I'm going off what Jim Collins wrote in his book "Good to Great," which everybody has to read who's into this topic. Being humble. Level 5 leaders, he said, are humble. So similar to what Chris just said, compared to a level 4 leader who positions him or herself as in, I lead and I have 1,000 foot soldiers. In other words, that's not what makes a good character trait. So again, Good to Great, Jim Collins, a must read.
Thank you very much indeed. And social, I think we'll try and we'll dig out a link for that. We'll put that in the social chat. Sarbojit, your thoughts, please, on this one.
Yeah, thank you. I also want to build up on what has been talked about so far. And I would also like to quote Michael Oland when he says, "They earn the right to lead, become a better leader by strengthening the relationship." So it's about connecting to people. And when you connect to people, that's where you get the authenticity. That means you are self-aware and you are true. What you say, you walk the talk, and you are proactive. And I like quite the example that Nick gave about the New Zealand Prime Minister's example. And she did show us a true, authentic leader, what should be. I would say that was a wonderful example that we saw.
Yeah, no, and you can tell that this is a live stream because, of course, my brain just left her name off entirely when we were talking about it. But it's, of course, Jacinda Ardern. Okay, it's kind of came back to me. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So Ardern, yeah, thank you. So it did come back to me over time, but there we go. So excellent. Thank you very much indeed. So I think what we should do is, why don't we kind of look at the social feed, and we'll kind of see who we've got actually online at the moment. Marion, thank you so much. She's actually a colleague in APMG, joining us from Houlton in the Netherlands. Now, an English person can always mispronounce any Dutch name that you can come up with. So I've just done a splendid job of doing that on behalf of a grateful nation. Thank you, Marion. And also, we've got Arlene joining us from Barbados. I'm not remotely jealous, Arlene, at all, when I contrast my weather outside my window with where you are. And Koi, thank you again, my friend. Thank you for your question, actually, all the way from Vietnam. Really nice for you to be joining us today. It's fantastic, giving us a little bit of your weekend. And of course, Diane Rampadarath, who is going to be joining us from over there, kind of on that beautiful sun-kissed island of Trinidad and Tobago. And we've got the team also down at the bottom end of the southern tip of Africa in Cape Town, which is great. So please do, if you're online, put your question into the chat. Ella and Adriana will pick it up and bring it in to the panel, and we'll get it in front of them just super fast. And on that note, Shanice, shall we move on, please? Let's take our next question.
Of course. We have a live question from Arlene on YouTube. How important is EI today as a leader? Is it something you're born with, or is it a skill that can be developed? EI referring to emotional intelligence.
Thank you very much indeed. Now then, this is really fascinating, isn't it? We've got a panel here of leaders and change management professionals. So I imagine you're all going to be fans of this. So let's focus on, is it nature or nurture? Bev, why don't you start us off, all right? And then we'll go to Mart.
So I actually think it's a bit of both. You know, like you've all probably experienced leaders where it just comes naturally, and I think that's partly because they've already got those traits, but also partly the environment that they have been raised in, and the values, the experiences, and all those types of external factors. But I do believe you can develop your emotional intelligence. It's like any skill. You practice it, you observe, you get feedback, you try again, and you keep practicing. And you just got to balance skills that you're trying to develop with the strengths that you already have, because you don't want to try to overcompensate, because then you end up coming across less sincere. So you do need to build that self-awareness so that you can understand then from yourself where you want to actually develop, and where that might be important, and something that you can do that becomes natural and second just within yourself. So I think it's a bit of a balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right there. It's like the Star Wars films, when they talk about the Force almost, you need to kind of, sort of almost feel it, and then you can appreciate it. It's the quiet voice that needs to be listened to. So really good start on this one. Thank you so much indeed, Bev. Mart, your thoughts on this, and then we'll go to Chris.
Quickly, it can be learned, can be developed. I'm not a big fan of as in you're born with it and that's it. Then as far as learning more about it, another must read, Emotional Intelligence 2.0 from Greaves and Bradbury. Another one that has to be read by any leader and be familiar with it, of course.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mart. Chris, your thoughts on this, and then we'll hear from Sarbojit.
Yeah, I agree with Mart and Bev. It is something that can be developed, and I think with good coaching, but it has to be. We're talking about authentic leadership. This has to be authentic as well. If you try and sort of come over with self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and it's not authentic, everybody can see through it. So it's something that can be worked on, and it's something that can be coached. But you then have to practice it. You have to apply what you're learning, and be ready. That vulnerability and humility comes into it as well. Be ready for feedback, because it can sometimes go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I might come back to that point in a few moments. Sarbojit, is it nature or nurture? Is it something that you're born with?
Well, I will say it's, as I will agree with the rest saying, It's both, and not only me or this panel. Researchers have also confirmed it, and people like Daniel Goleman, who just popularized the concept of emotional intelligence about in the mid 90s. He himself wrote about it, and to nurture it, to make it even better, we have to take a feedback and be ready to change. The first thing that the problem happens is we are not ready to change. We think if things are natural, we try to be stubborn and even want to change. But the first thing is if we can change, then we can nurture it and be much better. And the authentic thing comes from the humbleness which we nurture more, and then we can grow. And that is
Thank you
what
so much.
the essence of leadership. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Bev, you had some further thinking on this one.
Yes, I do. Thanks, Nick. I was just thinking, we're sort of suggesting to our listeners about practice and getting feedback, and you're trying to practice something that's really new, that's going to take you out of your comfort zone, and that creates a little bit of anxiety, and you don't want to look silly, and that's that whole being vulnerable. One of the things that I did that really helped me was I was sent off on it was a organizational leadership program that we were piloting. And when I came back to my team, I shared with my team some of the things that we'd learned or that some of these different models and things. And I actually took them through some of the things that I wanted to actually practice, to let them know that if they thought I was sort of behaving a little bit odd or doing something a little bit that looks a little bit weird, that it was actually I was trying to practice something new, and for them to feel comfortable to sort of give me the feedback that if they felt that it was actually something of that they observed that was a better way, or however they felt about the behavior or the outcome or the conversation. And that really then gave me a safe environment and a safe place to practice these skills. And it also gave the team the opportunity to lean in and actually support me develop to be a better leader for them as well. So it's a really simple tip if you want to, take on something new and try it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. And I can't remember who sang this song, and it's quite a cheesy song, and it was called the Sunscreen Song. All right. And you might remember it had a variety of different pieces of advice in it. One of which was, do not read beauty magazines. They will only make you feel ugly. Now, I would say the same advice should apply to LinkedIn posts about becoming a leader, because most of them will make you feel completely inadequate. All right. All of us are flawed. None of us are perfect people. Okay. And the thing to do here is to tune in to those imperfections, be willing to be coached. Coaching is such a marvelous experience when you make that connection and you really believe in it and you work hard at it. Remember, the coach is the one that doesn't look exhausted when the athlete's just performed. The athlete is the one that looks exhausted. Okay? The coach raises one eyebrow and says, yeah, it's good. Chris, I apologize. Please save me from my own analogies. Go ahead.
No, I think that was a very good analogy. I just wanted to mention that we talk about leaders as if they're at the top of the organization. But leadership runs right through an organization and right across an organization. And it's important. Some of the things that we're talking here are relevant to, leadership is really seen as an organizational role as opposed to a personality or a type of individual you are. And what you were just saying, I think applies across the board. There are very junior people in an organization who show fantastic leadership skills, and those need to be nurtured. Those need to be developed. And bear in mind that as you develop them and nurture them, they may have to go to another organization to apply those. But I do think we need to, when we're talking about leadership, we're talking about leaders and leadership across an organization and through an organization.
It's really, really important. And thank you, Chris, because that is something that we can all work on. All right. And
Yes.
we don't have to be in the hierarchy, in the top echelons, excuse me, of an organization to practice. Let's move on. Shanice, then, please. We'll take our next question if we can.
Yep, we've got another live question from Diane. What are some recommendations to practice authentic leadership traits in a fast-paced, deadline-orientated organization?
All right. Now, while the panel's thinking about this one, I'm going to jump in on this one. Very early in my career, we talked about transactional leaders and transformational leaders. Now, I don't know if this is still leading practice or not, but a transactional leader, generally, if I can paraphrase, is somebody who doesn't really care about what happens as to the steps that you take, so long as you end up at the right outcome. Whereas the transformational leader is actually trying to, help embed, bring the team with them, if you like, and help embed, a whole variety of new ways of working, as they go along. So from that perspective, I would say be super careful. If your organization has a high cadence, you're monthly or quarterly focused, your results driven, take care, because you may appear as increasingly transactional, and that is not good for a sustainable leader. It's a good way to exit an organization. It's not necessarily a great way to stay. Bev, your thoughts on this, and then we'll hear from Chris.
I think of the teams that work in that very sort of agile type of environment here where things are moving at a fast pace and changing regularly. To me, it's just that checking in, like at the end of a meeting or at the end of, conversations, just leading in and just asking the questions, everything okay? Were you okay with that? Some people need to take the time out to reflect. Or to go away and do a bit more research, or to explore what the objectives or what the outcomes are, and they actually need that little bit of space. So whilst it's fast paced, you still need to give people that breathing space. So enabling people to do that, I think, is really important.
Thank you very much indeed. Chris, your thoughts, and then Sarbojit.
Yeah, just building on what Bev said, and especially about agile organizations, and that's not just agile development, but true agile in organizations, agility in organizations. I think it's very, very important, and part of that agile approach is leadership as opposed to management, because lots of organizations that are in the question, fast-paced, deadline-orientated organizations, are very well managed organizations, not necessarily very well led organizations. And, from a management point of view, if you look at the definition of management, the word control comes up quite a lot. And so one has to exhibit behaviors, I would suggest, that demonstrate leading a team, giving freedom to the team, creating an environment where a team can work and produce the outcomes they need. And that can still be done. It doesn't matter how fast-paced an organization is. But to behave differently, you have to think differently first. So think about leadership in that environment rather than just plow in and try and change from management to leadership.
Thank you very much indeed. Great advice. Sarbojit and then Mart.
Hi. Well, I would like to extend this the agile thing that was talked about. Now, I am also a practitioner of DevOps, DevSecOps, and so when we talk about this, which is also a philosophy, not a technology area or something. Now there we see the first thing of this philosophy is to have a fearless environment. That means it's not about fear of getting, something horrible being done, but it's about fear of being oppressed. And here, the management is, as we say, management means control, but however, with a digitally transformed organization, the leadership transform, and from control, you just have influence and empowering. So when people are empowered, what DevOps tries to say that you have to empower people, you have to let them do the experimentation and give them the leeway to fail, to learn from there and to move on. And it doesn't say that with that you will be slow. So fast organization do not need to be organization that is always backstabbing each other. We can be the best organization. If you look at some of them like Netflix, Google, and a few others, they have been doing wonderfully well with this new philosophy. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed. And if you're a sports fan and you're watching some of the Rugby World Cup performances, you'll notice that it's very fast paced. It's quite interesting because the ball often travels backwards and yet the team make progress forwards. And so occasionally the ball is thrown beyond the next player in order to be able to increase the pace. So it's an interesting kind of way of looking at things and thinking about things, isn't it? Mart, final thoughts on this, and then we'll move on.
Just quickly, I would say again that word coach, be a good coach who is able to uplift people, but also somebody who can remove obstacles. I think those are two key elements in a fast-paced environment.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Shanice, let's move on, please. I know that we've got questions stacking up. We've got, actually, time is not on our side panel, so we're going to move at some pace now, if we can, and take our next question, please.
Of course. We've got a question from Lewis. Does the panel think that anyone can become an authentic leader? Are some people just always going to be better off as followers?
Okay. Can anybody become an authentic leader? I would say we all have the aptitude to be leading in different contexts. It's really about finding the context where that leadership is going to really shine through. Sarbojit, your thoughts, then we'll hear from Chris.
Right. Now, a couple of questions earlier, we talked about, can this be nurtured or nature? We all agree that yes, it is kind of both. So if that be true, then anyone can become an authentic leader, right? And all you have to do is you have to come out of your comfort zone, and then you have to accept the feedback of people and see how you can improve. And there is no way that there are some born followers. Each and every one of us in our own life, we are leaders at our home, at our work, in other places as well. It need not be that every time you should be a leader at your work and you should have a glass box to sit into where people can only see you performing from outside, you know. I remember going to some of these animal sanctuaries and we can see that happening, you know. We are outside and then others are inside and we can watch. So it should not be that. Leaders are open who are among us and with us.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Chris, your thoughts?
I think that's a very good point. Some people who are absolutely brilliant leaders outside of the work environment, in their faith, in their church, in their social activities, are not necessarily comfortable with being the leader sort of in the work with their work colleagues. So I think that some people, and I think it can be nurtured, it can be developed, but we shouldn't be putting square pegs in round holes where people aren't comfortable. And I mentioned quite a few minutes ago the term resilience, taking the pressure of work when you're trying to lead quite a large team, perhaps, or even a small team. If people aren't comfortable with it, they're very good at what they do. So let them do what they do and do it well. We don't have to keep pushing people sort of further up the organization, and they can be leaders in their team, and they don't have to be leaders in the hierarchy.
Yeah, it's really, really important that I remember some years ago when I was in the software industry, we were looking at specialist roles for technical people because, you know, previously the career progression was assumed that people would go from individual contributor to team leader to manager and then to business unit leader and so on and so on. And many people didn't want to do that. They really didn't want to do that. They really enjoyed doing what they were doing. So thinking about that from an organizational design perspective, and, you know, if you're working in HR and you're working in, you know, talent management within an organization, really, really think about those career paths and allow that thought leadership to shine, that situational leadership to shine rather than simply pushing them up into administrative roles that not suitable for everybody. Very good. Let's move on then, please, if we can, Shanice, and take the next question.
Yep, we've got another question from Becky. Is self-discipline required to become an authentic leader? I struggle to command respect and my colleague advised self-discipline will help with this.
Okay, so it's I'm trying to just unpack the question, Becky, so thank you very much for it. Sarbojit, why don't you take one dimension and then we'll hear from Bev if we can.
Right. Now, when we, we want to be a leader and we struggle to get command. Now, the thing is, respect can only be attained if you respect others. So others will follow you, respect you if you do that. But one thing is we have to have consistency. And the consistency is what about self-discipline? If I'm consistent, if I show people that I am truthful, I walk my talk, then they will know that I am good and I can be relied upon. Then only they will follow and respect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Bev, your thoughts?
Thank you. I was actually going to say something very similar around respect and trust, and approaching it very much around, you build trust by displaying trust in others and being trustful that way. The second part of the question around the discipline and some of the language in the question, commanding respect. Is it because there's a perceived lack of experience, or are you seen as not having any of the technical kudos or any of those types of elements? And is that what's actually causing that disparity, or is it behaviour where you might not be as confident in some of the decisions that you're making as well? So I would probably suggest to Becky to go back to her colleague and actually sort of say, what's the feedback you're getting, and why? What are you hearing and seeing? Why am I not actually being perceived as being respected? And what can I then learn from that feedback?
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Now then, for everybody who's watching online, and Becky, this is one of those questions that when we unpack it, the phrase "it depends" is hitting me all of the time between my ears. Okay, so rather than try and deal with this explicitly here, there is a general invitation, by the way, to all of the Level Up viewers. You are most welcome to connect with members of the panel. You can find our LinkedIn bios off the APMG International website. Just go to the events page, look up today's event, and you'll find all of us listed there. And you can click through, read a little bit about our professional careers via LinkedIn or our websites and so on. And then by all means, reach out to us and form that connection. We're always welcoming of people that want to connect in a professional way. A little less so if you're seeing it as a business development opportunity from a professional development opportunity. It's like, by all means, fill your boots. Very good. Let's move on, Shanice, if we can. Let's take our next question, please.
We've got another live question from Houlton on LinkedIn. What is the connection between emotional intelligence and cultural differences, and how can a leader engage them in agile teams? Disparately located teams.
All right. Okay. So we've got just about every level of complexity that there is in a modern organization. Now, Bev, you transcend this world all of the time, helping people kind of figure it out. What are your thoughts? Where would you begin with this particular Jenga pile of challenges?
I actually would begin firstly by just trying to understand a little bit more about my team and the environment that they operate in, and getting them to talk about what how they like to work and how they operate. And that might be around sort of sharing that this is my expectations and how I work, but does that work for you? And it is hard because, cultural differences can include some language barriers. They can include the time differences. They include a whole raft of things. And then being in that whole agile piece as well, where a lot of the work is sort of being put up on your Miro boards and stuff like that. I think it's really the leader having to ask questions and listen and build those connections and just take the time. I think it's just take the time to understand some of the differences and how we actually can leverage those. But how do we work together?
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, Sarbojit, I spent some time in my earlier career working in your region in the world, and I was not getting the right signals from the groups and the teams that I was working with, or rather, I was getting the right signals, but I was misinterpreting those signals. So, Sarbojit, in Southeast Asia, how would you go about unpacking this set of cultural challenges with having that emotional intelligence to recognize what's happening?
Yeah, true. The thing is, in this part of the world, people are always, because we are more in number, so we have an urge to prove ourselves, and we want to do more than what is required. So that kind of pushes people. Now, that one good thing is it may bring up the good quality, the leadership part, whatever it is, or it may bring you down. But today, I want to also talk about one thing. If you just go and check this thing, Leadership on a Submarine, it's a YouTube video, and that talks about how a submarine commander just delegated his leadership, and then how that changed the way of management. And that is something wonderful. I mean, even though there's a cultural change, but if we trust others, and then if we can delegate, then people do show their capability and they can then rise up.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. Now, I'll just share with you two key things. One was very early in my career, I mistook people nodding as their approval, and they were simply transmitting to me that they were still listening to me. It's a very different thing. Okay, so there's an example of a European not getting a business culture in a different part of the world. Also, just within Europe, it's a tiny geography, but it's full of diversity and very, very different ways of thinking and working and acting and behaving and so on. So do have a little read if you're due to work in Europe. Of a book by John Mole. I do think it was updated fairly recently, and it talks about all of the different business cultures that you will find in these tiny, tiny countries that collectively make up what is one of the most diverse and most interesting parts of the world. So John Mole, it's called Mind Your Manners. So it's a very easy one, actually, to remember. It's all about appreciating other people's business cultures and hopefully tuning into them. All right, very good. So, Shanice, I think we're going to be super quick. We've got a couple of minutes left of time. Panel, we might just take one or two answers to our final question for today.
Wonderful. We've actually got a live question from Arlene. As a leader seeking to maintain a happy and healthy organisation that is successful at achieving its goals and objectives, which comes first, people or projects?
People or projects, what really does come first? Bev, your thoughts?
People.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That is, true, authentic leadership in action, ladies and gentlemen. All right, if you wanted to see evidence of that, Chris, I imagine you're going to, agree wholeheartedly with Bev. Is that right, Chris?
Projects, full stop.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we may have just clipped the audio off a little bit there, but no, I think we got that kind of in a heartbeat. Really, it is so important. It is really, really so important for us to be able to. The clue is in the question, really, isn't it, Arlene? Thank you so much. That the well-being of the organisation relies on every part working together in a symbiotic relationship. And with that in mind, it's important to, really do think through the people dimension of everything that we're doing. Well, very good. Well, look, everybody, it's been an absolute rocket-paced ride, through this topic around becoming an authentic leader. So thank you very much indeed to all of our producers online. You've done an amazing job today of hitting us with some great questions. The panel did look from time to time a little bit quizzical, about some of them as we were trying to think our way into them. So you did a great job with all of the questions. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the panel and ask you to share your closing remarks with us. So if I may, Sarbojit, I will come to you first and then we'll hear from Bev. So Sarbojit, closing remarks for today, please.
Thank you. Today, it was a very challenging. I mean, I had been in panels, many of them, and today the questions and the live questions that kept me on the toes. Thank you so much, all the audience. As we always say, thank you, because without you, we won't be here. And you made us come up with the answers for your queries. It's just not answers. It's just we have to think over from our own experience and then talk about what we practice. Because if I am not authentic, I cannot share.
Thank you very much indeed. Bev and then Mart.
I think it's just a couple of very simple things. So be confident, believe in yourself, be consistent in the way that you behave and the way that you deal with situations and with individuals. So be consistent. Always practice your personal integrity. Be empathetic, but most of all, just be yourself.
Thank you very much indeed, Bev. Great advice. Everybody else is taken, by the way, so you need to be yourself. Sounds an obvious statement, but it's absolutely true. Mart, your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Chris.
Thank you, Nick. Those were some robust questions indeed, so thank you, everybody, for those questions. I want to refer to, and it will be in the after the show when the titles show up, a link to a speech from Admiral, McRaven. It's a motivational speech at a graduation, and it's a must-watch for anyone who seeks an example of somebody who is inspiring and can motivate. So it's a must-watch clip on YouTube.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Already half the audience is making a note of that, because I'm imagining if it's an admiral and it's a graduation speech, there's lots of people in uniform. There's likely to be a great number of people now heading over to YouTube to watch that one. Thank you very much indeed, Mart. Always great links, always great recommendations, by the way, from Mart on every show. Chris, your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Shanice.
Well, I've just enjoyed this. It's been brilliant. So thanks for inviting me, and thanks to the those that have given the questions. I'd make an observation that the workforce of now and the future, when you look at millennials, Gen Z, Alpha, and what have you, they're not used to working in hierarchies and being managed. They don't like being controlled. So leadership across networks is going to be absolutely key for our lives, our social lives, as well as our business lives. But the one thing I'd say, and I think Bev mentioned it, be authentic you first before you can be an authentic leader, and just believe in yourself.
Really, really good advice. And if there's nothing else, you can always refer back to, that thinking that we were talking a little bit about earlier. It always starts with us. It starts with us, the people that we want to be today. And if you've had a tough day today, then tomorrow is another new day for you to begin, and so on and so on. And that's how you kind of build it out. Shanice, a really rapid, fast-paced show today. I know that you're doing a lot of work behind the scenes, getting everything queued up. So your thoughts on today?
It's been so insightful. I feel so inspired, and I've taken so much information away. So thank you, panelists, and thank you to everyone that asked all those questions. We have stacks of questions that we didn't even manage to get through. So it's a very important topic. Maybe we might have to return back to this one in the future.
I'm sure that we will. It's increasingly something that people want to dig into and spend a little bit more time on. So we will roll over the questions that we didn't get to today. So thank you, Shanice, for all of your hard work. Thank you to the social team online. And thank you to all of our producers. Our producers are actually you, the audience, okay? It's 60 minutes of Q&A, and you set all of the questions for us to be able to answer. What's coming up next then? Let's look forward a little bit now, if we can, on Level Up. So we have, of course, over on our website, the answers to more than 1,400 questions that have previously been submitted to various panels. More than 170 experts from all across the world have answered those. So you can dig into those and search for them by topic and even by individual question. Don't forget, you can listen to the audio versions of the shows on your preferred podcast platform as well. Now then, coming up next week, it's really busy actually here at APMG. We've got a whole variety of webinars going on as well as Level Up events. So do check out the events page on apmg-international.com and look up the complete program. Monday the 24th, we're going to be facing up to climate change as well as a whole range of other things that can hit businesses as we explore how to build a business resilience plan, and importantly, how to do that in a pragmatic way so that you can actually use it. Before next week going on then to building a culture of business relationship management across your organization on Friday the 28th. Halloween is, of course, on the 31st of October, and we're going to take a spooky look into how to grow your business by measuring all of the right things. Okay, I don't know if there's going to be ectoplasm, but there'll certainly be excitement. Subscribe to the show, and we'll send you a personal summary of what's coming up and how you too, of course, can join us here on the panel and level up your career with APMG. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you next time.